No, it was a great getaway.
Okay, at this time we'll call the regular monthly meeting in the Columbia City Plan Commission to order and have roll call, please.
Chip Hill.
Here.
John Kissinger.
Here.
Don Langlow. Jennifer Romano.
Here.
Nikki Venable. Here. Dennis Hornick.
Here.
Dan Weagle.
Here.
Larry Weiss. Patrick Sigraff.
Here. Previous meeting minutes from April 7th.
I move they be approved as distributed.
Have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Hill. Those in favor of approving the minutes, raise your right hand. Those opposed, same sign.
Abstain.
One abstention. Old business, Nathan?
We
have no.
Let's actually
witnesses.
do the oath to witnesses and just
Okay.
stay. We're doing it.
All right. So we'll administer the oath to any witnesses.
You want me to say it anyways? Yeah.
No, I don't think we have to go to that formality. I'm showing the empty seats here on the screen. So.
All right. Any old business?
No.
New business, 25-C-ZOA-1, Columbia City Plan Commission. Zoning text amendment regarding standards for front yard fences. Nathan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. So, I have a handful of slides here and an activity for you guys to do, which is there before you. So let me go through a slide or two here first. As you do remember from last meeting, as a discussion item, and now tonight as a public hearing item, the City Council forwarded a request for a zoning text amendment dealing with the types of fences that are allowable in front yards. That's a very short version of everything being discussed, but that basically is what the council requested, was figure out how we can allow more types of fences, tall fences, up to 4 feet fences in the front yards. Right now we allow any type of fence up to 3 feet, any type of fence that meets the material types anyway. So that's the directive. On the screen is the current code as is, and I included some bold text and some underlined text for reference here. And in your packets, you all have on the last page a copy of that existing code. Going to this we showed last time too, and this is how we define the front yards in cases where we don't have a platted building line on the left, and also for corner lots, and then on the right in cases of having a platted building line. Subdivisions that are newer than about 1960 typically have platted building lines. Older ones typically don't. It's not a completely 100% situation, but that's a rule of thumb. So that's mostly there for reference. So this slide is what we currently allow for front yard fences and walls up to 3 feet in height. Excuse me. With these three modifications. The number 4 option is a question mark because it's actually a cattle fence, but it happens to have some nice trim added to it. So is that ornamental? Is it not? That would probably be something to be figured out. Number 5 is just a standard, more standard garden slash, it's not a cattle fence, but agricultural fence. And then number 7, interestingly, is chicken wire. It is hard to see, but trust me, it is chicken wire with 2x4s. Not even 4x4 posts, just 2x4s hammered into the ground with a 2x4 runner on top. So 5 and 7 are most definitely not ornamental per the existing code, would not even meet the qualifications for a 3-foot front yard or any other type of fence because they are not quote-unquote ornamental. Number 4 is questionable. And then, as you recall, this is what the code allows up to 4 feet in front yards, as we've defined them. And the code currently only allows for open chain link fences, which are typically some sort of vinyl coated on the left or galvanized metal on the right. Vinyl coated can come in black or green. There are other colors, but black and green are the typical ones. I guess brown maybe too. And then galvanized is pretty typical. So before we go on to what I've proposed as options and get into that discussion, if you guys could take a minute or two and take those photos that I gave you, just write notes to yourself. We talked about collecting them and then tallying the votes. I don't want to put you on the spot quite like that, but just to help organize your own thoughts, figure out which ones you feel would be appropriate to be taller than 3 feet in front yards. We're not talking about side yards, backyards, places that we allow 6 foot currently. It's just the front yards, more than 3 feet and 4 feet or less. So that span. So if you don't mind, just, if you need a pen, I've got some extra pens as well. Just mark it up however way you want so we can further discussion in a second.
Well, some of these are.
My thoughts is the size of the fence
isn't as important as how far the setback has to be. It needs to be back farther than that one up the street from where this one wants to be.
We will get to that. Right now we're talking material and height.
Okay.
Like I say, we gotta watch for the road right away. Cause some of these fences are setting right up by the sidewalk. And some of them wouldn't be allowed to be that close. Now, there's some, I mean, in my area, my right of way goes to the edge of the sidewalk, I get that.
Think a generic situation, or think of whatever situation you want to apply in terms of height and material. We will talk about location again. It's 7:08. I will give you until 7:10. You want me to mute you as well so you can? Okay. But in seriousness, it's relevant because it makes the discussions that I have later a little easier.
Per our conversation today, that's the only reason I'm doing that. I'm gonna bring up something while people are thinking. So number 2, split rail fence. We had a situation at Chauncey and Market with a ledge on a sidewalk, and the homeowner requested split rail. Well, then that set the precedent. So Chauncey and Spencer Street, the guy wants a split rail fence just right at the corner. Would that trigger a fence request?
So it's more number 2. Right now the code would allow for, because I would consider that ornamental, and it's definitely open, so up to 3 feet tall, that would be acceptable in the front yard.
Okay.
Over 3 feet would not be.
Okay.
Or excuse me, it doesn't even have to be open, but it can be up to 3 feet tall.
Can it be in the right of way, or does it have to be all the way back on the setback?
It would only, yeah, it's 7:10, so let's venture into the realm of location now. Because the main objective, the main directive is deal with materials and height. What we discussed last time was the Board of Works has the authority over what goes in the right of way. And the process that we've developed over the last couple cases, the case at Jefferson Street and Line Street, the Board of Works had full discretion because that fence was entirely in the right of way, or maybe there were 6 inches outside of the right of way because the house was set up against the right of way line. But since then, the other case that we've had went through Board of Works and then BZA for a variance because it didn't meet the front yard height and so on. So that's the process, goes through the Board of Works. If it crunches, if it doesn't, it stays only with the BZA. And the Board of Works leads basically to say, yes, it is appropriate, or to modify it before it goes to public hearing with the BZA. Or if they deny it outright, then the petitioner may just withdraw it and there's no need for a public hearing. So
we can't have like a set of guidelines, black and white, and there's no.
You
have to
are
have all
getting into a muddied water of zoning code versus authority over the right of way, which is well beyond the directive given by the council, and probably will require a lot of cooperation and legal interpretation to be fully effective.
So if it's allowed in the right of way, then it has to go to the BZA,
Mm-hmm.
and then the BZA board can say yes or no.
Yes, they could still say yes or no. So in theory, not likely because it doesn't make a lot of sense, but in theory you could have a fence that's only in the right of way if the Board of Works says yes and the BZA says no, but logically that doesn't make a lot of sense. So
When you say it doesn't make sense.
because you just have a floating piece of fence in the right of way.
If the board of works says they can and the BZA says they can't,
Exactly.
then they can still do it or they can't do it.
In theory, they could do a fence that's located here. So let's say the initial request was to do something like this, a tall fence that encroaches into the right of way like this.
Okay.
Let me actually use a pen. So something like this, and in theory, if the Board of Works only approves it down here, now let me switch back to the laser pointer, approves this portion, and the BZA says that's fine for the Board of Works, but you don't meet the criteria for variance up here. In theory, yeah, you could have this portion be built and not this portion. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But in theory, that could happen. And what you're getting at is setting up some sort of code framework to prevent that by forcing the Board of Works and BZA to work together in a more formalized code work framework.
If somebody was to build that fence, what would the fine be?
I believe the fine is in the city code up to $500 per day for a zoning violation.
And who polices that?
As a zoning violation, we do. As a violation of the agreements with Board of Works, I do not know, honestly. Board of Works.
Would that not fall under their new code enforcement officer?
Yeah, the code enforcement officer, but we're talking what code would be enforced, not necessarily who.
This might be a loaded question, Nathan, but we're being asked to render our opinion on the height of a fence without having the ability to have the forethought of if something's going to be placed in the right of way. Perfect example would be if we said, yeah, 4 foot could be allowed with however many numbers that are here. And then another entity would say, well, yeah, you can go ahead and put that in the right of way. And that would have probably have altered our opinions completely.
So that's why the Board of Works goes first. So if they say, no, it's got to be short, then the BZA would follow suit.
But there are exceptions that they have made. Right?
No, the case with Jefferson Street is the only case where the Board of Works was the only entity approving it, and that was because that fence, because the house was up to the right-of-way line. The BZA was not involved with that one.
So you're saying the house was actually sitting up there up against the blue?
In that case, yes.
Okay.
And they installed that fence incorrectly.
And that's what my understanding with the Board of Works was. And the Board of Works, I mean, Dan has already said it's a learning experience for them. It's a learning experience for all of us. That's part of the reason why we're here, is take that learning experience and use it.
Yeah, that fence was not put in the way we approved, not even close.
Gotcha.
And that was why, that's another reason they had to take it down.
Right.
Because it wasn't, I remember sitting there and approving it, and I'm like, I went out there and I'm like, well, that's not what we agreed to. And so that's why we had to have them take it down.
That owner didn't take it down, did they? I thought they sold the house
I'm not sure who took it down, but
before it was taken down.
It was the subsequent owner.
I know it wasn't put like we requested.
And keep in mind, while there is one particular case that has prompted this discussion quickly, this is applicable to the entire city, primarily residential. We're talking residential fences, but it is applied to the entire city, both old subdivisions, new subdivisions. So,
Well, that's one of the reasons when we looked at this, and I was talking to Nathan about, we want to keep it simple. And basically, the only thing we're adding and changing is making that a 4 foot instead of a 3 foot fence with potential of other types of fences that we can see through, and that's the only changes we're making basically at this point, is changing that from a 3 foot to a 4 foot. It doesn't have to be a chain link fence, it could be something nicer.
That was the big problem up there because you couldn't see through it when you
Exactly.
pulled up on.
Well, that's, like I said, because it wasn't placed where it was supposed to be placed.
But
And
you
so-
take, if we say we can let them do 4 feet, and then
Yeah,
they actually push, they go out, and the Board of Works approves that, and they can put a 4 foot fence out into that, comes into the,
inside the right of way unless they request special permission to
Right.
set it in there.
even the first 3, if it's 4 feet high, and you're out in there, and you're coming to that intersection in a small car, when you're looking at a fence, even if it's broken up like that, and you're looking at it, the fence is running almost.
That's what I'm saying, you can't
can't
really
see.
judge that because some of those right of ways go right up to the sidewalk, where this one we're talking about, that's an 82.5 foot wide right of way there, so you're 41.25 feet off the center of the road, which pushes that clear up to most of those houses on Line Street, it goes right up to their door. The house we're talking about,
I
that
get that, but if you're
Safety issue.
for a safety issue, if we don't let them do a 4 foot fence,
well, if
that
it's
releases that.
you're not gonna see through a 3 foot one either on that side, if you're in a car. That's why
It limits the amount of cars that wouldn't be able to see through it. But you're right. A very low profile
A
appears.
pickup truck could see through it.
Huh?
A pickup truck could see
You'll
over.
see over it. Yeah, exactly. But if you raise it to
But-
4 feet, you raise it to 4 feet. Now you're starting to add more vehicles in that
Well,
won't be able to
what
see,
was-
like a Toyota Prius
Well,
would
what
not
is-
be able to see over a 4 foot fence.
What I'm saying though is, when we look at those situations, you don't let them put a 4 foot fence in a line of sight. You know, they have to understand that it's gonna happen the same thing that happened on my street. If it doesn't, if they put it in the wrong spot, it's coming down.
Okay.
And
So,
we have
Joey
specs.
can put up a 4 foot fence, but Sammy down the road wants the same thing and you can't.
Do what?
Right.
I said Joey can put up a 4 foot fence, but Sammy down the road can't do it.
Right.
Because we're saying that the intersections.
Okay,
I think you gotta
now
look
you're
at,
getting into a.
that's why the mayor said we need to look at situations
So let's just make.
with that.
keep in mind, you are in charge of the zoning code. Zoning code does not apply to the right of way. Board of Works has the ultimate authority. The Board of Works hopefully respects what the zoning code says, but your authority extends to the right of way line. And again, without a huge code rewrite of multiple codes, that's where it ends. For the time being, that's where it is.
So our mission is to determine the height of the fence and materials used for the fence.
Right. And if there's
Up
other
to-
things
up to
related
the-
to that, then we can use
So if
this
we say 4
discussion.
foot
But
or
right
3
now,
foot,
height and materials.
And there's fun.
then
And to be honest with you, the same thing happened, well, in this case, they're dogs. And I think I might have mentioned it before, when you go to the top of my cul-de-sac and I'm walking my dog, there's 2 Germans and another big dog that come flying out at me, and they have an underground fence. Okay, terrific, but I'm just praying to God that batteries are working in that thing. Because when I see those dogs out, I walk on the other side of the road, because I don't trust that underground fence any more than I can throw it. And so.
At open market, there's a big dog that does come out into the street after you when you go walking, and you don't have to have a dog with you. It's just gonna come. It's coming across the street.
Yeah.
To try to get you.
Yeah, and so
I was kind of getting away from where.
First of all, I want to say I'm not a big
Yeah.
fan of fences in front yards anyway, but at the same
Mine
time,
either.
when somebody
Mine ain't gonna give
requests
them 4 foot.
something to go into a place where we got a rule that says it can be a 4 foot fence, it can be decorative, you know, with some of the limitations that Nathan has described here. We also got a letter, a very lengthy letter, from a resident that had some concerns about going to a 4 foot. I don't know if you had a chance to read it or not. She made a lot of comments, made some great sense in it. I mean, she really did. And I respect that letter more than you know. But at the same time, you know, we're looking at, all we're doing basically is changing the height of the fence to 4 foot and be decorative instead of a chain link.
I'd respect it a lot more if she said who she was.
I agree. She had
So-
some scribble signature down. I couldn't tell what it was or he.
So,
I got one in my truck.
Dan has alluded to option number 3 a couple times here, but let me go through the 3 options that I sent
Switch is gonna be 4 foot.
to you guys.
That switch over there on the wall.
Just behind Amanda's head.
That's 4 foot.
Mr. Langlow?
Oh,
We got Don's vote. He don't
Hey,
want
Don.
fence at all.
it's okay. Okay. So option 1 is revising the materials allowed for residential fences and creating a transparency requirement of 75% maximum or minimum transparency for being in the front yard if you're more than 3 feet and 4 feet or less. That's option 1. Option 2 would be also amending the ornamental materials. It also, doing so, has a couple other things which I'll show you in a second. But otherwise, option 2 just says all fences, if they meet the material requirements, can be up to 4 feet in height, and fences and walls. Option 3 is what Dan referred to as a very minimalistic approach, just simply adding in quote-unquote open decorative alongside open chain link in our existing code. So there would be no other changes, only open chain link and open decorative would be allowed taller than 3 feet. All other types of fences and walls would be a maximum of 3 feet. So let me go through what this looks like. This is the code for option 1. So as I said, transparency is talked about here. And then building materials for option 1 and 2 are the same. Would be made of residential fences would be chain link, wrought iron, wood or vinyl picket or stockade type, brick, or other quote-unquote ornamental materials, which is what we use currently. Agricultural and non-residential uses may use non-ornamental fencing materials. So that would be your barbed wire, your cattle fence, and so on. And then the rest of that code, despite it being in blue, is the same as what it is now. So this is option 1. Going to what would be allowed in option 1, more than 3 feet, up to 4 feet tall. This is what you would see if we used option 1. 1, 3, 15, and 16. So 15 and 16, the chain link ones are currently allowed. You're adding in option 1, which would be either vinyl or wood picket, and then option 3, which is that wrought or wrought iron fence. Option 6, the split rail, that's a stacked split rail, while ornamental, does not meet the transparency requirement. Number 4, while being transparent, may or may not meet the ornamental requirement. And number 2 is in the same boat. Actually, number 2 may or may not meet the specific material requirement because it is not a picket or stockade type fence. It is a rail fence, and that is not specifically called out, despite it being open and ornamental.
But 1 would meet it? Because I think 1, you couldn't see through it.
1, actually that's a good point. Let's pretend that those pickets are spaced just slightly farther apart. Not much farther, but you're right, it would be...
See how well you can see through it running down the sidewalk? You can't.
So 5 and 7 would be agricultural only, and then the others don't meet the opacity requirements, the transparency requirements. Option 2 is the same material requirements, but allowing any type of fence or wall up to 4 feet. And this is what you get when you do that. So 2 still is a question mark, 4 is still a question mark, 6 is still a question mark. But your walls and more solid fences, your shadow box on number 10, your rail fence on 11, and then your walls in 12, 13, 14 all would be allowed up to 4 feet. Option 3, again, just adding in the open decorative fence clause, which is subjective, but ornamental is subjective, and we have that in code currently. So this is what you would wind up having if we just say open decorative. Essentially, you remove the question mark from 2 and 6. Those are both open and decorative. And you retain 15, 16, 3, and 1. But you would not have the 3.5 foot tall walls, for example, there. So,
How does number 6? How do you figure that to be transparent?
there is space between each one of those rails.
Yeah, but
if you're more at the ground level,
You can't see.
But if you're straight on,
it is open. You're hitting on things that are needing to be discussed, but that's why it would be allowed, because it is open. It's just not maybe not as open as what we want to see. That's why option 1 includes a specific amount. So
there's a way to like your wrought iron fence that was up there at Jackson or Jefferson and Line. There's a way to fix all that. You just make it a 4-way stop. Where there's a fence like that. Then people, you go up so often somebody that's flying down the street.
okay, so coming back to what you marked up on your little activity sheet.
do we have option 4?
Yeah, do we have a 4?
Or we change it to a 3-foot fence? Period.
Option 4 is mix and match, and no, the council was very clear that they want to see 4-foot front yard fences. More types of 4-foot front yard fences.
Oh, then why are we here?
The
know.
homeowner still has an option. If they only want a 3-foot fence, they can put up a 3-foot
Right.
fence, right?
Yeah, and that is a very good point. We're not dictating that you put up a 4-foot fence, but if you want a 4-foot fence, it can only be of X type or with certain limitations.
So the 3 and the 4 would have the same materials that we approve, correct?
Yes. The difference being that they would have to be open in some fashion, except for number 2 just allows all to be 4 feet tall. So yeah.
So Nathan, you're telling us that keeping the front yard fences at a 3-foot height is not an option?
It isn't that way now because we already allow chain link at 4 feet. But you're correct. The council was very explicit that they want to allow more types of chain link fence. Ornamental, and I mean, we have 2 council members here, so correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's what.
Yeah, so the option, I know we talked about just making everything 3 feet at the last time or just not doing anything. Those are no longer viable options.
I think that's why we kind of landed for option 3.
Yeah.
Just a simple change of footage, basically, and changing the types that could go in there. Open decorative. That's kind of why we kind of went that route. Instead of
So
some of that other,
to have
some of that
more,
other stuff was a little.
was
Right.
it just to have more individuals' opinions? Because
That's
it sounds like, was it to have more opinions based on this, or, because it sounds like council should have just went ahead and made their decision.
I mean, I'm sorry, I got different ones tonight.
Oh, yeah. No, was it to have more individuals have an eye on this to make a thought or a suggestion? Because for me, what I'm hearing is council should have just went ahead and made their own decision.
So
Sending it,
council can't do that.
No.
gotcha.
Anything dealing with the zoning code goes through plan commission, even if explicit directives.
It's all right.
Oh, that's okay.
But no, it's already said they want 4-foot fence. 3 foot's not an option. So they have made a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay.
So
Okay, I'm just.
what you're here to
telling me
do,
they did.
Is if we should add additional to it.
right? Would it be appropriate to say 4-foot walls actually would be okay too? I mean, that was something, they're definitely ornamental and in certain instances would look very appropriate.
Well, it sounds
But
like
maybe we don't wanna build
that.
there.
It could've, well, it shows that.
So just to clarify again, Jennifer and Dan, council says we want to go up to 4. They can still have a 3 if they want one.
Correct, correct.
But
I think ultimately
Oh,
the
we're
point
changing.
was that people would have more options than what they have currently. When they came to talk at council, what they were allowed to do seemed pretty limited.
It's
And
pretty limited when it comes to what you can see through. I mean,
perhaps,
I
but
mean,
like,
there's a-
but what she wanted to do was actually more attractive than what she could do.
But was it still the safety issue?
Yeah, and I think the other thing that needs to be pointed out here is anything that goes to Board of Works, they tend to be very,
We're
very cognizant of what is safe and what is not. We have, the police and the fire there at that meeting, and they are very careful about what is allowed in that
I
respect.
should say, I
they
went
make
out
the
and measured.
decision.
I actually went out to the place and measured where she was possibly going to put it in the right of way, and make sure that it's not going to be a line of sight problem. It's not going to be so it's like situational things happen, and so that's why I'm like, well, I was going to tell her flat out, hey, you can't put it there because that's going to screw with the line of sight with traffic. I mean, that's not going to happen. But I did go out and measure where she was thinking of putting it, and so that's kind of what I do. When I see situations, I go out and look at the situation and make sure everything should be okay. Not like what happened on Line Street. Trust me, that was a big blow up. And that's why we learned something from that situation. It's like, hey, if we're going to approve something, I want to go out and make sure everything's cool before we do it. And so, like in this situation, that's why I don't know. I think that's my responsibility being on Board of Works, is to ensure the safety of the people out there.
Mr.
So
President,
sometimes the answer's maybe
Larry
no.
had a question.
I'm sorry, Larry.
No, it's okay. So I guess I'm backtracking here to the earlier part of this whole conversation. As far as the front lot goes, why are we even considering or allowing the fence in the right of way? Why? Just like in that situation at Line, and what was that, Jefferson?
Yeah.
That front on Line Street, excuse me, that facial part, it just wouldn't, I mean, why was it even acceptable? I mean, why didn't they say, okay, you can come out from the corner of that house over to Jefferson and go down to your driveway and back or whatever. I mean, whether they were wanting it to keep the kids corralled or the dog corralled is irrelevant to me. I mean, my question is allowing them even be putting it in the front right away to begin with.
I guess, one of the things I look at is all the rules and regulations we have are disallowing people to do what they want on their own property. In my opinion, I think we got too many rules that doesn't allow people to do what they want on their property. But we do have rules on what they're allowed to do on their property. And that's why some people want a front yard fence. Personally, I don't want that, but if that's something they want to do and they follow the guidelines that we have established, then so be it. And I think if I remember right, where you grew up, in that double on Holden Road, you guys had a front yard fence. 3 foot
That was actually a walkway to the high school.
Okay.
That my parents donated the ground
Oh,
for
gotcha.
because they were cutting through the yard anyways.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, but I just thought there was one that ran the length of the property down through there on the front. But
I mean, that's unfortunate that some of these in the base neighborhood, or whatever you want to call this, the central business of the original town, that the houses are built right to the right-of-way line.
Right.
But I think in other instances where you're gonna have right-of-way 35-foot setback or 20-foot setback or 25-foot setback, they could build at that right-of-way line and complete their fence guideline. If you're down here in the original part of the town, it's not gonna work. And I think
Well,
that's just gonna have to be an accepted circumstance for people living there.
That's why they go to the Board of Works and ask, to see what the issues are. And sometimes the answer is gonna be no.
I mean, to me, it's no different than
the way it
if there's a section of, you're trying to do, another can of beans we could open up would be, the whole issue of sidewalks and things like that. But there's parts within the central part of town, there's considerations that were made. Thomas Marshall signed something and it never happened, let's say, or something like that,
Well, I think that you made a great point, because all these areas are different. Some are historic, some are not, some are brand new. And that's why you say it's very difficult to make a rule for one rule fits all, because we have so many different situations in our city. And so that's a valid point, but I'm like, what if, you got a lot of what ifs there. And I'm just saying that, if we could look at, Board of Works looked at every situation, and it says yes or no. I don't think you can have a black and white rule here when we have all these options.
So if we come up with an agreement on what they can put out there, and they come to you, and you basically give them the guidelines to what they could put out there,
Correct.
then there's no reason for it to come to the BZA board.
Well, I think for now,
Why? Why?
Because the BZA still has the authority over the zoning component of it. Board of Works authority ends at the right of way, yours picks up at the right of way.
I think,
the opposite.
But then you got this conflict with the owner, the owner. If we don't like what they're going to do.
Well,
So if they're working, what I'm saying is they're working straight with the owner, and they've agreed to let them do what type of fence and how high they want to put it. Then for us to even look at it, to change that, but all that would do is cause a huge conflict between them and the owner.
So what I would suggest, out of these three options as written, ignore the mix and match thing for the moment. I would say that option 2, just allow all types of the types of fences up to 4 feet, that resolves it. So if the Board of Works says a 4-foot fence is great, there's no need for the BZA to be involved, because it already meets the code up to 4 feet anyway. So I would say that would be an easy way to resolve what you're getting at. The other easy way would be for the Board of Works, and Dan already answered this, but I'll rephrase it. The other easy way would be the Board of Works just to say, no, we're not going to allow fences in the right-of-way, period. And then you wouldn't have that dispute between the boards. So either, and Dan already said, no, we want to work with people. So that's kind of off the table.
Okay, so let's put that one back up there.
Option 2?
Yeah. Of what fences use, what materials would fall under that?
So this is option 2 as written. It basically would be the rewrite of the fence materials to allow for chain link, rock/wrought iron, wood or vinyl picket or stockade type brick, other ornamentals.
Show us on.
Oh, sorry, you want the pictures?
Yeah.
This one. So basically 5 and 7 would only be allowed in agricultural areas. They're not ornamental. 4 is questionably ornamental. 6 and 2 are potentially not picket or stockade type, but I would say they are ornamental.
So they could build 12 and 13
That's what I was going to say.
out in at 4 feet high.
Up to the right-of-way line, but not over the right-of-way line without the Board of Works.
I'm saying they could go to Board of Works and ask to have those.
Yes.
Be more generous than what I was looking at.
They wouldn't have to, because
That's what
But they wouldn't have to come. They wouldn't have to come to the BZA board.
So Don's got a question down there.
The distance from the streets that have curbs, is there a distance that fence has to be away from the curbs? Reason I'm saying this, if we have one of those bad winters and the plows come up and they throw it out, where's it gonna be? It's gonna hit the fences, it's gonna fall there, it's gonna freeze there, and it might be a month before we get to use the walls.
I would
Been here
assume,
long enough. That's not every winter. Because
So-
those fences would stop, most of them, well, pretty much would be a stopper for them when they blow their snow.
the fence would have to be behind the sidewalk, correct?
Yeah, Chip, you want to answer that a bit more fully?
I just need to ask it.
Thank you. I mean, you've got the tree lawn. I don't know. I'm trying to think through it, Don.
So,
I'm picking up what he's saying. I don't know what the best answer is, though.
in my recollection, for what it's worth, we have very few instances where the right-of-way line is at the curb line. We have it for perhaps alleys and a handful of streets. We see it more in the county where county roads didn't follow the platted rights-of-way, but we very rarely see it in the city where we have rights-of-way that have been platted. And like Line Street here, it's an 80-foot right-of-way. The property line starts 40 feet from the center line. Your sidewalk is going to be closer than this fence would be, except for where the Board of Works allows that encroachment. So I think that's more of a Board of Works question, but it's fair to explore that concept as well.
Is a person that owns that property, and we get a bad snow and their sidewalks covered, isn't they're
required to clean
they're required to clean it. And then here comes one of those plows in there, and throw them over the fence, I don't know. That's how well they like the place, the person that lives there.
Nathan, can you give us a property here in town? Can you pull up a platted property and give us, show us where the house, the building setback is, and then where the Board of Works?
How's that one? Pick one of those.
Pick one and blow it up.
Jefferson, okay.
Jefferson and, Jefferson and Line.
Yeah.
So let's look at let's look at this one. The southwest corner of Jeff and Line. So you can see.
Okay. So that's their building line. That's a setback.
So the blue area is the right of way. There is no building line platted because of the age. The setback is essentially 0. You can see that as an averaging, the houses that are there are virtually maybe a 1 or 2 foot setback. So in this case, a front yard fence would be, there is no front yard. The front yard is the right of way.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that distance? You know?
Should be 42 and a half, or 40, 41 and a half.
Yeah.
Or
So
41 and a quarter.
if-
It's 82 and a half on Line Street.
Go out
So,
to
41.
South Valley River Drive.
Yes.
Let's switch the situation.
Yeah, we
We're
got
gonna have
that
to
one
pull
too.
that one up.
That's another one. I have a request. Yeah, because I get a lot of people's, who maintains the front yard? It's not mine. We get that, sidewalks, the whole 9 yards, trust me. It's like, well, technically it is in the ordinance that you do.
Yeah, you do.
I'm not
Well,
mowing
your
it.
property line and your building lines
You have
setback is
use
two
of it.
different.
You
It's
just
two
don't
different
have use of
pins.
building onto it. But you do have use of it, so it is your.
I will eventually pull up Beacon. It's very, very, very slow tonight.
Trying to get these goofy things working right. They're loners. So that's why it's slow.
Okay, so
For some reason.
you said Valley River Drive where,
I'm just thinking in Brooks's new property, just to switch up from a different, if a different case came to us.
okay. Do we have any of these houses? Yes, this house is built. Well, you can imagine where the setback line is there. It lines up with the edge of the house, basically. So all of this area in front of the house to that blue line is front yard, and everything on this side, because it's platted building line, is also treated as front yard.
Unfortunately, I don't have the building lines and easements on that, on Beacon yet, but.
You might, but it's not.
I got them drawn, but.
I don't have myself logged in right now, so. Oh, come on now. Sorry, I'm kind of bouncing around here. Let me pull Beacon back up.
Most of the building lines go right up to the house, though, on those.
So
if they wanted to put anything in the front yard or the side yard, they'd have to go to the board of works.
Yep. Basically anything over, no,
it's theirs. It's just
anything over 3 feet up, over 3 feet that is not a chain link fence, or over 4 feet of any type that is located in this area goes to the BZA. Anything located, let me change colors, anything located out here of any type whatsoever is in the right of way and goes to the Board of Works.
Okay.
So anything out here.
So in this particular instance,
The reason that we see the encroachment requests through the Board of Works in the historic parts of town is the additional right-of-way that's in our very, very wide historic areas. This is only a 60-foot right-of-way or even 50-foot right-of-way in the new section, as you can see up here, and lines up much closer with that sidewalk. So people consider the sidewalk to be the edge of their front yard.
So the likelihood of this ever even getting to the Board of Works for any type of question on fence would be out of the question.
Would be very, very.
Because I don't know what you would do.
They would have to go in that like 3 foot, 2 foot area, or 1.5 feet, whatever.
Oh, between that
yeah.
and the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Basically this.
Okay.
This area right here.
Right.
Which usually isn't that big a deal.
We got that an intersection again, so that one line of sight would play a big deal right there. That one, why?
But going back to the property side of things, getting away from the right-of-way side, this is still a good example. So what would be appropriate being a modern subdivision for front yard fences that would be in this area and this area? Is it that only 3 feet of any type of fence or wall with 4 feet chain link getting a 4-foot bonus, or all types up to 4 feet, transparent only, and so on?
Well, anything inside that would have to be come in front of the BZA anyhow.
No. Right now, in the red area.
Inside the red area?
Inside the red area, we allow 3-foot fences of any type currently.
Right.
Or 4-foot chain link.
Right.
So if you're over, if you have a picket fence that is 3.5 feet tall, that would require a BZA visit. If you have a 5 foot or 6 foot chain link fence, or a 6 foot privacy fence, that is the most common fence variance that we see. That's where the board gets involved. But what we're talking about tonight is things that the board doesn't see,
Right.
because they meet code. I don't know. Yeah, I'll mention it. There was a statement, and we went back and looked through our BZA cases where we had fences, and as I just mentioned, virtually all of them have been privacy fences in that secondary front yard. We couldn't find any examples, at least we went back about 10, 15 years, of situations of a taller chain link fence or a 3.5 foot picket fence. Doesn't mean they may not have had variances, but we didn't find them in a quick search, at least. So this is not a hugely common issue, but it is still, I mean, Dan, you said we're trying to give people options, and Jen, you said we're trying to give people options.
Yep.
Let's be proactive.
I'm saying, and this is nothing against John, let's put it to vote, version 2, see what comes out of it. Change it to 4 feet.
So you wanna make a motion?
But I got a question before we do a motion. So if this homeowner wanted to put up a 6 foot privacy fence along that blue line, they would go to the BZA?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if they extended past the blue line, okay, let me get a different color here. Green, I think will show up. So let's say they wanted to do a privacy fence that looked like this, which is a pretty common scenario. So 6 foot privacy fence. The portion that is in this area would be subject to a variance request. And that is the type of variance that we see when we see fences. And there are other problems with that, not lining up with the neighbor next door, for example, but that's a different ball of wax.
Behind him.
I'm not sure what you do with a ball of wax, but anyway, topic for another night.
Yep. Okay.
He's trying to block his driveway.
So Jim,
sidewalk someday.
Yes, I'll make a motion that we vote on what option number 2. For the sake of time.
I'll second his motion.
Okay. I have a motion, a second, to approve option number 2.
So, for clarification, are you suggesting that that be the recommendation that the commission sends forward? Okay.
Yes.
And then you vote whether that's favorable and so on.
Any further discussion?
Done, you guys.
No.
Those in favor of option number 2, raise your right hand. Those opposed? We have 2 opposed.
Okay, so for the record, we have opposed John and Nikki. Was there anyone else opposed?
Don, were you for or against?
Against.
Against, Don's against.
Don's against, so 3 against and 6 for, no abstentions, correct?
No extensions.
Okay, so the way I took that was that the recommendation should be for option 2, and just for a matter of formality, can we make sure that that's a favorable, unfavorable, or no recommendation? So could you please
Favorable?
humor me and just have another motion of saying whether it's favorable?
I'll make a motion favorable or unfavorable.
Good.
You want it favorable.
You want it favorable?
Yes. Yes.
Second.
Thank you.
Dennis, did you
And
say?
then do you wanna see all hands in the air?
I'm gonna do a roll call.
Whoever wants to vote.
Okay.
That
So-
might be the easiest way to do a roll call.
Roll call, yeah.
So please repeat the motion.
The motion that I have noted is that based upon the previous vote, option 2 is the recommendation, and Chip made a motion that that recommendation be favorable, with Dennis seconding that. So at this point, it would be to send to the Common Council a favorable recommendation of code revision option 2.
So one question, does this go with it? What you've identified as the ornamental materials?
We can, and yeah, that's part of the overall staff commentary, so yeah, we can make sure that goes too. Just like we do with rezonings and maps and stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, any questions about the motion to recommend a favorable for option number 2? If hearing none, those in favor raise your right hand.
He's doing a roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. Amanda, would you do a roll call? Thank you, Dennis. I screwed that up.
Mr. Langlow, do you agree that the motion should be favorable?
No. He's shaking his head.
Mr. Weiss,
Yes.
Ms. Venable,
No.
Mr. Kissinger,
No.
Mr. Ziegler,
Yes.
Mr. Weagold,
Yes.
Hold on, I hate to be a bearer of bad news. We need to have a public hearing.
Right now?
So before we finish this vote,
You want me to run out here and sit
sorry,
on the
legal
chair?
counsel. Let's deal with the public hearing, and then we'll restart the motion and the final recommendation. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
So at this time, I will open a public meeting in regards to this fence code revision.
And for the record, there's no one in the audience and no one on the electronic audience. Okay.
So now you close.
So now I can close I close the public hearing on 25-C-
You could build that up to 4 feet.
ZOA-1 fence code revision.
But that was against the sidewalk.
Now you can resume the roll call vote.
Should
Or you
we
need it all
Start
over.
new.
start new?
We can just start now.
Why don't
Okay.
we start new? So
All right.
Chip, do you want to remake that motion?
I'll make the motion for favorable option to send to the council.
Second.
Okay.
Motion and second to send favorable recommendation on option number 2 to city council, and we will now have a roll call vote.
Mr. Langlow,
No,
Okay.
Mr. Weiss,
No.
Ms. Venable,
No.
Mr. Kissinger,
No.
Mr. Ziegler,
Yes.
Mr. Weagold,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Romano,
Yes.
Ms. Warnick.
Okay. Thank you for bearing with that. I didn't want to get caught with not having a formal public hearing. So with a 5-4 favorable vote, we'll pass and certify a favorable recommendation of what I've drafted as option 2 to the Common Council, and I plan to get that to Clerk Treasurer in the next couple days, so it should be on the council's next agenda next week.
Great. Okay, under other business, vice president position, Mr. Weiss.
Yes. I will be having some medical activity taking place sometime probably in the next 3 to 4 months. And I felt that it was in the best interest of the Columbia City Planning Commission that for day-to-day operations, signing of documents and plats, that I step aside at this time as the vice president and allow for, people to have accessibility that would be available here. And with that, I would like to make the nomination of Nikki Venerable to replace my term for vice president.
Okay. Are you willing?
Yes.
Okay. Any other nominations? I guess we need a second for Nikki.
Second.
Yeah. I move the nominations be closed.
And a second for that.
Kill
Second to
two birds.
close. Anybody want to close?
Second.
There you go. All right. Those in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. That's called the railroad.
Welcome to the team. That's how we do it.
Exactly. Nathan, any reports from staff?
Nothing major. Permits are starting to pick up slowly. They are not complete. They never were completely dead, but they weren't as busy as they've been the last couple years. But they are starting to pick back up, so we are starting to see activity again. There was something else I was going to mention, and it escapes me. So if I think of it, I'll email you guys.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn, raise your right hand, two, three. Those opposed? John Dickel.
I think I still need to get